Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about the new Pat McGrath Rose Decadence palette and how it differs from the previous mini palettes released, including the Golden Opulence and the DR2. But first I want to do a quick ranking before we get to the comparisons of the two palettes. So I want to rank my 2020 purchases from least favorite to most. I would say probably one of the worst were the Urban Decay and the latest release from Melt Cosmetics. These were super patchy in my opinion, and the Naked palette wasn't pigmented enough, while the Melt Cosmetics palette was overly pigmented. And speaking of pigmented palettes, the Raw Beauty Christy palette was very pigmented. There's no issues with blending, but it just didn't make it to my top 10 list, and neither did the Pat McGrath Golden Opulence palette, just because this one was just so repetitive and I didn't reach out for it as much throughout this year. I also didn't reach out as much for my Too Faced Born This Way palette, so these are not going to be in the ranking. At number 10, I have the Natasha Denona Love palette. I ranked it below the Norvina palette, the DR2, and the Bronze palette by Natasha Denona. I felt like the Love palette was nice for Valentine's Day, but still not that nice. At number 9, I would put the Pistachio Palette by BH Cosmetics. I feel like this was a very unique palette and a very affordable palette, and that's why it deserves to be in the top 10 mid-year palettes of the year, because the colors were very unique and affordable for the price range and the quality that you're getting. At the same time, it was about the same as the Sydney Grace singles that I had, so I feel like those two together probably deserve the number 9 spot in my ranking list. At number 8, I have the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk palette that came out earlier this year, and it was $75. I believe it went on sale on some foreign websites, but it is a very pretty palette. I haven't reached for it as much, which is why it's on number 8, but as far as the quality, it's top notch. I remember I compared it to the Urban Decay Naked Cherry, and it was around the same time as the Natasha Denona Love palette, and it was instantly a favorite, but it was not as good as the Divine Rose one, which came out last year, and so that's why I placed it at the number 8 position. At number 7, and this is based on affordability, the ColourPop Mulan palette, because it was super affordable. It was about like under $20 if I remember correctly, and there was a nice set of red shimmers and some nice everyday colors in there as well, and I found that it was easy to work with. Yeah, that's my number 7. Number 6, I have the Norvina Volume 4 palette. I didn't realize I would reach for it as much as I ended up doing, and I actually really like this palette. I ended up using it for the purple in the middle a lot, and I would say it's one of my favorite palettes of 2020 so far, and the shimmers are just really next to none, and even though it's a pressed pigment palette, I think it's a good investment. So for that reason, I ranked it as my top 10 palettes of the year. At number 5, I first wanted to put the By Terry palette by night and by day, but then I realized that this is not just by how pretty the packaging looks, but also by how affordable the makeup is. So instead I decided to put Juvia's Place, the Violet palette in there, because I realized this is such a good palette for the price point, and that you are getting a nice set of purples in there that you probably cannot get with your Urban Decay Ultraviolet. So that's why I ranked it there. So number 4, I first wanted to put the Lilac You a Lot palette by ColourPop, because it's so affordable, and I still think it does deserve that spot and as far as 2020 palette rankings so far. But also I realized that the Paris Edit palette from Viseart that was about $30 that came out earlier this year was also just as pretty and also deserves that number 4 spot, and I really enjoyed both of these palettes. So at number 3, I've ranked my Natasha Denona Mini Retro Palette as number 3 because it was so versatile and yet so affordable. It was $25, I believe. You could, apply like a 10% discount code from Sephora or 15%, or even buy it directly from Natasha Denona and get a really good value palette. Number 2, I put the Natasha Denona Bronze Palette because it was so versatile and such a palette that I reach for a lot these days. I don't think it's going to be limited to summer use. I think it's a palette that will work all year round, and it's got some really pretty shimmers if you're into shimmers, and I actually ended up liking this one a lot. So I do recommend this palette if $60, $65 is within your price range. At number 1, I did put the Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2 palette. I think it's one of their best release palettes so far, and I really recommend it. I do find that it's a lot less reachable than the Divine Rose 1, but that one extraterrestrial trichrome color, it actually is so worth it, and it's a good investment if you are looking to have some unique shades. It also comes with lip glosses and liners, so I got everything together, and I think that it's definitely worth it. Now let's get back to her most latest release, which is the Rose Decadence palette. That is going to retail for $65, and immediately when I saw the pictures, I recognized that these shades are something that we've seen before. I'm sure you've seen this too, that these shades, the packaging is very similar to Divine Rose 2, but once you compare it, it actually looks very similar to Golden Opulence if you have that in your collection. So I decided to put these side by side together to see what are the similarities and differences. And right off the bat, you notice that the number one thing that is pretty obvious is the golds. Obviously, the golds are not going to be exactly the same, but if you do own a couple of her palettes, you'll start to see that the golds do get very repetitive. There's only so many shades of gold that you can ultimately produce. I feel that this gold is very repetitive, and I'm sure most people would agree with me that that one, doesn't add a lot of value to the palette if you already own her products. The next comparison that I wanted to do with these two palettes was just to bring them closer so that you can just look at the images side by side and realize that what we're really getting is the same as before. You're getting 2 mattes and 4 shimmers, and if you actually take out the background color, which is that red packaging from the Golden Opulence, and also get rid of that pink packaging from the Rose Decadence, it'll be a lot easier to compare. So what I did was I decided to take that background away, and then once you look at these two images, it's a lot more clear what the difference is. So obviously at the Golden Opulence, you have those browns and as a crease color and matte colors for the crease, whereas for the Rose Decadence, you only have your peach and your burgundy colors to work on your crease. So your eyes are definitely going to be a lot more reddish toned, and your look is just going to be straight up like a red look. Now the similarities here again is the shimmers. Both of the palettes have 3 shimmers, and it seems that for the Rose Decadence, you're going to go for a more deeper burgundy look compared to the Golden Opulence, and you're going to get something more deep. Now what's new here is that shimmery orange peach color and that shimmery pink color at the top left. These shades are called Scandalous and Peach Champagne. So Scandalous is the orange one with the shimmer, and the pink champagne one is the one at the top left of the palette. So basically what you have here after you subtract the differences from the two palettes is just, in my opinion, the way the mattes look in the crease and how the shimmers reflect So it's a very minor difference overall if you're looking at someone, but I believe that the peach and the burgundy shade from the right, which is from the Rose Decadence, are very similar, if not identical, to the DR2, and the brown and the mustardy shade on the left, which belong to the Golden Opulence, are similar to her previous palettes from previous releases. So again, that's just my opinion. I think the differences are super minor. Now, when we go ahead and look at the swatches, it looks so identical to the Divine Rose 2. When I layer them next to each other, it's almost like it's a short mini version of the Divine Rose 2, and I think that's why it's been created. I think it's intended for people who already don't own the Divine Rose 2, or weren't able to find that within their price budget. So I think that was the intention of this palette, and I don't know if you already have that palette, if it's really worth it to go ahead and purchase this one for $65, unless that one shade really speaks to you, that one orangey shade, Scandalous. I think that's the unique selling point here, that one orangey shade. I feel that all the other colors, we've seen them many times over in other palettes of hers before, especially the golds and the peaches, especially the golds. And I think that, it's just a very repetitive palette. Unfortunately, I don't think there's been a lot of creativity going on this year, but I'm pretty confident that she'll come out with one of those Mothership palettes later this year. I'm almost certain, because it's not typical of her just to release one Mothership palette per year. But nevertheless, as a collector, I might still pick it up, and I'm still interested in buying a lot of her materials. Anyway, let me know in the comment section below what you guys will be doing. Will you be buying it or not? What was your favorite palettes of 2020 so far? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Also, don't forget to subscribe to be entered in monthly giveaways. There's still a giveaway at the end of the month, and that's only for subscribers. Thank you.